Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory podcast. It's good to be with you once again. It does not seem like it's been long at all. As a matter of fact, it has not, since me and Steven have been back with you, but plenty to discuss. Once again, hey, that's the Braves off season for you. That's what happens when you have a good team that both recognizes what great players did last year and also what hopefully your team's going to do this off season to have an even better shot at winning a title next year. But a pleasure to be with you, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. And as always, it's a pleasure to be with my podcast partner, Steven Tolbert. Steven, how are you, sir?
What's up, Sean? Yeah, man. Deja vu all over again. We've been here. We were here a couple days ago or yesterday. I can't actually remember when we did it, but it wasn't that long ago. But yeah, we got some news that broke today. A little bit unexpectedly. We weren't quite expecting to get this news so quick, but it really started pouring out about midday today. And then we got some stuff tonight with Chris Sale that we needed to talk about as well. So yeah, we got an interesting show. It maybe won't be our longest show, but we got some stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. And that's what we love to do when it comes to the Hammer Territory podcast. If it's related to the Braves and it's significant, we are not only going to be here to say, hey, here's what's going on, but what's the significance of it? What does it mean? And I know that we've talked about Chris Sale plenty. People know by now just how significant and special his 2024 season was. But I really feel that it's going to hit home with many when they see just how much he's going to be honored during award season. And that started tonight with the MLB Awards show. Chris Sale named the 2024 NL Comeback Player of the Year, but perhaps even more eye-opening, not necessarily eye-opening, but more significant, is the fact that Chris Sale was a member of the All-MLB first team. And Steven, again, we talk about just how spectacular Chris Sale was. But again, we'll cover this in a second. The first thing that stands out to me is, coming off, several years, really, he had not had a full season, since 2019, but coming off several years of random injuries, just trying to work his way back. And then another injury occurred. The fact that Chris Sale was so consistently good this year, I think that's what stands out. He just set a bar that he met time and time again to be a true ace, not only for the Braves, not only for a playoff team, but arguably the best pitcher in baseball. He's won Comeback Player of the Year, could become only the second person to win Comeback Player of the Year and Cy Young in the same season. Rick Porcello did it in 2016, but it's good to see him being honored as he deserves everything that's going to come his way.
Yeah, it's good that he gets the recognition. He was amazing last year. Honestly, there's an argument that he was even more valuable because of the Braves' circumstance than even maybe if you look at it in terms of like context neutral stats, which is kind of all the rave these days, is to strip away all the context and then just, talk about a player's individual value. But if you add back in the context of what went on with the Braves this season, with Spencer Strider going down the first 2 weeks of the season, the offense just disappearing basically from May 1st to the end of the year, they leaned on that pitching staff heavily to make the playoffs. And it started with Chris, and he was unbelievable all year. I really hate that it ended the way it did, where he got hurt literally the last 2 weeks of the year and couldn't pitch in the postseason. That was a bummer because that's kind of what people, a lot of people are going to remember the year by that instead of how awesome he was for the first 5.5 months. And, that the starting rotation in a lot of ways carried this team, and Chris Sale carried that starting rotation. So I'm happy that he's going to get recognized. Almost certainly there's going to be a bigger award coming here in a couple, probably in the next week or so, where he's going to get recognized even more because he was awesome. He was very clearly the best pitcher in the National League last year. And again, when you add in the context of what happened to the Braves in 2024, he was even more valuable than that for Atlanta, for how much they had to lean on their starting rotation just to win games. So yeah, credit to him. He's going to deserve everything he gets, all the accolades, and I'm happy for him. And obviously here's to a couple more years of getting this level of Chris Sale. That would be unbelievable.
And I'll say this. I think that all three, Shohei Ohtani is clear. I think he's a pretty clear, favorite for the NL MVP. Ketel Marte and Francisco Lindor each are very deserving to be a finalist. But I think if you were to have a fourth finalist, Chris Sale would be the guy that should be considered for that when it comes to the MVP award. But I want to put again spotlight on the fact that Chris Sale won NL Comeback Player of the Year plus first All MLB honors on the same night. Because to me, that's the perfect setup to, again, just put into perspective how special his season was. Not only coming back from multiple years of being injured, but to come back and once again pitch like he did a decade ago, but also to be the ace of a playoff team, also to potentially arguably be the best pitcher in baseball. But to me, what stands out even more than anything is he did all of this at the age of 35. If you were to look through baseball history and see how many pitchers did what Chris Sale did this year at the age of 35 or older, you are going to only see all-time greats. That's how special Chris Sale was this year and how rare of the level of production he reached at his age truly was. When you have that many examples of how special a season was, it was an all-time season for Chris Sale. I'm not saying that it was the best season we've seen from a Braves pitcher. I don't think that it was. But I think when you talk about the best seasons of Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, Spahn, I think that this season from Chris Sale is right up there. I don't mean to be dramatic by saying that. The numbers on multiple levels will back that statement.
Yeah. And listen, the fact that he had so many injuries in the last 5 years obviously is mostly a negative thing. But the fact that none of them were like serious, I don't want to say none of them, but like for the last few years, they weren't like serious arm injuries. They were like fluke stuff. He had a batted ball that, he just had these like minor injuries that became, pesky, and he just could not stay healthy for any full season. But the upside of that is that his arm is pretty fresh. I mean, he doesn't, if he had pitched 200 innings the last 5 years and he had all those miles on his arm, I don't know if he's doing this. His arm is very fresh. And that's, I'm sure, why one of the reasons the Braves felt comfortable with going ahead and guaranteeing him another year next year when they made the trade and they ripped up his old contract and gave him a new one. Because they think, he's got a lot of baseball left in him. And 2024 only proved them to be right, that, they certainly believe that he can do this again next year. I would not be surprised if he does it again next year, if the Braves, go ahead and try to get him under team control for a couple more years. I could very much see this being a Charlie Morton situation where, Chris Sale pitches into the upper 30s, maybe into the 40s with the Braves. But yeah, having so many years in a row where you're not throwing a lot of innings, actually, I think helps him in this spot. He just doesn't have a lot of miles on his arm. A lot of guys that are his age that have been in the league as long as he has have a lot more miles on their arm than he does. And so, yeah, but unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. See what the 99th percentile outcome. No, like you could not have dreamed for a better outcome. For all the talk of how bad 2024 went for the offense, on the pitching side, other than the Strider injury, the Braves got some really, really, really good outcomes on their pitchers. Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, Mitchell Swallenbach. Max Fried wasn't in a 99 percentile, but he was probably like 80, 85 percentile outcome, given how he missed, a year and a half or half the season the year before that. So the pitching staff had a lot of really good things happen, and Chris Sale was at the top of the list. So yeah, all the credit in the world to him.
And one final thought on Chris Sale that we'll probably speak on more as the offseason goes along. We've seen a lot of long-standing Braves, not a lot, but we could potentially see several Braves who have been with the team for several years potentially exit this offseason. We've already seen Travis d'Arnaud. We could see it with Max Fried. We may potentially see it with Charlie Martin, AJ Minter, others. But the fact that you bring Chris Sale in, and Chris Sale has been so consistently outspoken about how spectacular he feels the Braves club and the clubhouse is, and he himself is such a great team leader and representation of, not only what baseball should be about, but also just being a great teammate. That's what makes it even more special. And I think that that's what allowed for him to, that played a part in how spectacular he was. The fact that he could be such a great ambassador for the game of baseball and the Braves, plus be able to pitch at the level that he does, that's a great development for this Braves team, especially when we've known for years going into this next season, we were going to have a lot of changes go our way to make our pitching staff effective for 2025 and beyond. And he's been a great revelation in multiple ways.
Yeah. And this could be like the beginning of a 5-6 year run where it's kind of the Chris Sale, if you kind of if you kind of label teams by the best pitcher on the team, that's in some ways how I remember teams, especially Braves teams. Like looking back, you had the Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz era. Then you had the Smoltz, Tim Hudson, like little run. And then you had, Julio Teheran was the best pitcher on the team for a while. Then you had the dark ages with the rebuild. Then you had, the Mike Fultonevich. Then you had the Max Fried, Charlie Morton era. And we could kind of be moving into the Chris Sale, Spencer Strider era of the best two pitchers on the team. And again, because he doesn't have a lot of miles on his arm, this could be an extended thing. This could be like a 4 or 5 year thing with him. He's got to stay healthy, of course, at his age, but as long as he's pitching at this level or even, even a notch below this level, the Braves are going to be interested in having him lead their rotation. And so this could be the beginning of a run where he's the best pitcher, him and Spencer, Strider are, back and forth, the best pitchers on the team. And listen, you can't complain if you're a Braves fan. I mean, those are two fantastic pitchers that you could sit atop your rotation. And, the Braves are, as long as they stay healthy, knock on wood, they should be in good shape.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is Storyworth.
Here's how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, Storyworth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by Storyworth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With Storyworth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
Well, you want to know what's even potentially more important to this Braves fan base? The franchise, maybe not so much, but this Braves fan base, than hearing about how spectacular Chris Sale has been and that he could be that for an extended period of time for the Braves. You know what's better than even that, Stephen? An easier way to go about seeing him consistently now and into the future. And that may be even that may be even bigger news from this Thursday, as it was a pretty historic, I would say, day when it came to several teams and their fan bases potentially being able to find an easier way to watch their favorite teams play. Of course, we're talking about the current situation that's going on with FanDuel, Diamond Sports Group, whatever you want to call it, former Bally, that broadcast source that had rights with several teams. Of course, that court date was today, and through that we got some pretty major announcements. Stephen, I don't know if anybody has covered it as good as you have. I mean, that is a full compliment to the effort that you put in to be on top of this story. Please, the floor is yours, sir. What was so special about today, and why should Braves fans consider it a big breakthrough when it comes to watching Braves baseball?
Yeah, so today was the first day of the bankruptcy court hearing where the judge was going to decide whether Diamond Sports Group, which owns FanDuel Sports, which was formerly Bally Sports, if their plan to restructure was sufficient, essentially is what he was deciding. If they had a sufficient enough plan to exit bankruptcy court under a restructured plan that would be, financially solvent, essentially. And we weren't expecting an answer today. It was scheduled to be a 2-day hearing because the 18 months leading up to this hearing had been so contentious, especially between Major League Baseball and Diamond Sports. There had been a lot of back and forth, and not in a nice way, not in a positive way. There had been a lot of bickering in court on the record. And so the judge set aside 2 full days for hearings, for debates, for arguments, and then being able to make his ruling. And in kind of a surprise twist, and in the 11th hour, Diamond Sports Group has successfully renegotiated their deals with about 6 or 7 different baseball teams, along with their NBA and NHL contracts. And MLB and the Atlanta Braves both formally removed their objections that they had placed last week because everybody was pretty happy with the renegotiations. And because of that, because the formal objections were removed and because all of these contracts were successfully renegotiated and everybody came to court today kind of, singing Kumbaya, the judge accepted Diamond Sports Group's plan, their restructuring plan. So they are now back to being the primary distributor for Braves games going into 2025. And on top of that, what happened in the renegotiation is that the Braves also are allowing it's FanDuel, but Diamond Sports Group, the Braves have given them their streaming rights. And this is probably the biggest part of the day, is that Diamond Sports Group negotiated a deal with Amazon to help distribute in-market streaming for all the contracts that Diamond has. And in-market streaming has always been the thing that we haven't had. Like, we've always had out-of-market streaming. If you have MLB TV, you can watch any out-of-market game. But if you try to watch a game in your market, you get a blackout. And that's been, baseball fans know all about blackouts and the frustration with blackouts. In-market streaming means you could actually stream a team in your market. You could be in the middle of Atlanta, Georgia, and stream a Braves game. And according to the court filings today and the reporting, that's coming in 2025, where you will now be able to stream a Braves game if you don't have a linear cable package, which has always been the requirement. Excuse me. Now you don't have to have that. Now you can do it via, according to the report, you're going to be able to do it via Amazon Prime, and that's significant. That's a huge piece of news, and we don't have all the details yet. The Braves did put out a statement confirming all the reporting that this did indeed happen. So we know it's a fact that it happened, but we don't have details yet. I know everybody's going to ask, how much is it going to be? What are the logistics behind it? We don't have those details yet. I was really hoping to get those details today so we could talk about it tonight, but they just haven't come out yet. They'll probably slowly leak out over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, when we get them, we'll talk about them on here, but that's significant. And it's also significant that Amazon Prime is the partner in this, because Amazon Prime is one of the industry leaders in streaming. And, they have all the logistics stuff on the back end, the servers, they can handle the traffic. They have high quality streaming. It's a very good consumer experience streaming with Amazon versus if you're doing with some mom and pop, streaming service, which all of us have had before. And it's a really poor experience. When you have somebody like Amazon, it's a much bigger deal. And so now we're just waiting on the details. We're waiting on exactly how much it's going to be, how it's going to look. The reporting today was that you have to have an Amazon Prime subscription. And then on top of that subscription, you would have to have another subscription for your in-market team. But we don't have any pricing. We don't have any details. But that's significant because before today, that was never even an option at any price. And now it seems like, as long as everything continues the way it is, that's going to be an option for next year. And we'll just have to see what the details look like when they come out. But a significant day, a really big day if you follow this stuff. A big day if you're in market and you don't have a cable subscription and you're just really frustrated about not being able to find Braves games. Theoretically today, new ways have opened up for you to be able to watch Braves games that you never had before. And so from that perspective, it's a good day.
And the other thing about it is that this opens up so many options, right? You talk about, in the Atlanta area, which that is significant because as you're, the closer you are to the product that you want to watch, the more unlikely it is that you're going to be able to do it if there are blackouts. But those blackouts that have been in place for years now, they extended very much past Atlanta. And for the Braves are one of, the biggest. They've got one of the bigger regional followings out there in terms of, actual like landmass where their fans are in baseball, right? Like in the Southeast, they're the Southeast team. I know you got a few more teams like the Marlins and the Rays and things like that. But when it comes to the Southeast, I would say the vast majority are Braves fans. I know, Stephen, you live in Alabama. This is going to impact you in a positive way. I live in the Memphis, Tennessee area, and I'm kind of in the midst of two of the teams with the biggest regional followings in baseball, the Braves and the Cardinals. And I can tell you that I know many Braves fans in the area. I know many Cardinals fans in the area who went through the same thing. They don't live near Atlanta. They don't live near St. Louis, but they still had to deal with the blackout issues. So the big thing for baseball being involved in this and really wanting to see this thing through to where there is the potential to where now you have in-market streaming is you've got the ability to finally have your product go to the masses. And the fact that it's the Braves and the Cardinals and other teams, that is a big, big deal. So when we talk about the sport of baseball, not putting an emphasis on the simple things that would make the game more presentable or bring more fans to the sport, this is the type of development that helps that out. But not only that, it's also the fact now when it comes to Amazon Prime and when it comes to them being the home of the potential streaming subscription, you've got a majority of ways you could be able to watch it. You, of course, can watch it on your TV at home, but it can travel with you. You could watch it on your laptop. You can watch it on your phone. So this is the type of accessibility to a much bigger potential area now that is being unlocked. And I think that that is something that is a great development for not only Braves, not only fans of other teams, but the sport of baseball itself. And that's why I say, and again, I may be being a bit dramatic, that's why I'd say today could be a pretty historic day.
No, you're right. I mean, the bigger your television market is, the bigger your blackout map is. And that's what you were just talking about, where you could be a Braves fan in Kentucky and Tennessee and Alabama and Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and be blacked out from Braves games, not being able to stream those games. If you have an MLB.com subscription, MLB TV subscription, then you wouldn't be able to watch Braves games. You can watch everybody else's games, but you can't watch Braves games because that it was designed that way. They didn't want you to be able to backdoor the cable companies because they took all the money from the cable companies. So this is a huge deal that in-market streaming is now a thing for, one of the biggest franchises in the sport and certainly one of the biggest television markets in the sport. And again, it's a very big deal that it's Amazon. Their distribution is maybe outside of Apple, second to none. I mean, they're one of the best in the world at this. This is what they do. And so having a partner of that size with that, those kind of servers, the ability to handle that kind of traffic without disruption, like it's a big deal. They could have, there's a world where they could have given you a streaming option, but it would have been through a crappy little app that can only handle, 1/10 of the traffic before it crashes every 10 minutes. And we've been through that before too with, if you've ever had I think when Bally had an app, it was a really crappy app and, nobody could use it and pretty much nobody even tried to use it. So again, the fact that it's through Amazon is not only is it happening, but it's happening through a major distributor. So it's a big deal. And I know the devil's going to be in the details. It's still possible that they could charge an arm and a leg for this thing and people get mad. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I don't know. I don't know what the price is going to be. As soon as we have it, obviously we'll talk about it and give you the context for how it is for other teams, but at least it's an option now. It wasn't an option before. You had no option for in-market streaming. And now, based on everything that was released today, you will. And that's a step. That's at least a step in the right direction of getting more people access to games, which is, I think, baseball's biggest problem before this was just the blackouts were just so punitive. Like it was crazy, and the blackout maps all, they all overlap. So you could be in a spot where you're blacked out from like 6 different teams if you live in the wrong city. They were brutal. And so in-market streaming is a huge deal. It's a massive deal. The biggest news of today by far. But the Braves are going to be on, FanDuel Sports next year. So if that's who you watched the Braves through last year, and, obviously that used to be Bally. So if you watched the Braves on Bally last year, you will be able to watch them on the same channel this year. That's the big takeaway for you. You'll be at the same channel, probably the same announcers, same time. The name will be different. It'll be FanDuel, but it's the same network, effectively, just a new name. But same time, same channel, and that wasn't a guarantee before we got to today. If today it went differently, that might not have been the case. But after today, it's the same. It's the same everything except a new name. And on top of that, we get in-market streaming, a massive deal. So that was the news for today. Again, we're still waiting on details. As soon as we have details, we'll talk about them. But just on what we learned today, it was a noteworthy day.
Absolutely. And so it's great to see, after a noteworthy season, Chris will get the recognition that he deserves. And it's good to see in general that Major League Baseball, again, there's effort being put forward to try to make the most of a situation that has not been the best look over the past 18 plus months, but now it definitely seems like the resolution could open up a solution to a problem that many have been asking for years. Stephen, do you have anything else for us on this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Nope. We'll get the final, we'll get some of the bigger awards, I think, next week. So we'll definitely talk about that. And then we get into some more free agent stuff. I think the non-tender trade deadline, or the non-tender deadline for arbitration guys, I think is coming up. The qualifying offer deadline is coming up. There's a couple of big days on the off-season calendar coming up, I think next week. So obviously make sure you're subscribed, check out the YouTube page, Apple, Spotify, all the places you listen to podcasts. And we always appreciate the support. You guys have been awesome to us, and we very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. And the great thing about seeing our faces is that you can also see where to find us. Actually, I should go this way with my hand there. But you can find myself at Stats SAC on Twitter/X. You can also find Stephen Tolbert at B_Outliers. Hammer Territory at Hammer Territory, wherever you get your podcast, but also across all forms of social media. And again, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Sean Coleman. Again, when it comes to the Braves, whatever you see out there when it comes to the news, we more than likely will have some feedback and some insight as to what it means for the Braves and obviously their fan base as well. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.